Welcome back, everyone, to another brand new single-part story. We really hope you enjoy this one. It's a bit longer than usual, so sit back and enjoy the ride. My name is Tyler, and I'm 24 years old. I had just moved out to a small coastal town called Millbrook because I couldn't afford the rent in the city anymore. My job as a freelance graphic designer meant I could work from pretty much anywhere, and Millbrook had the cheapest apartments I could find within a reasonable driving distance from my parents. The town itself was one of those sleepy little places where nothing ever really happened. There was one main street with a coffee shop, a hardware store, a diner, and a few other small businesses that had probably been there since the 1970s. I had been living in Millbrook for about 3 weeks, and I was starting to get pretty bored, honestly. The internet in my apartment kept cutting out, and my only real friend in town was this guy named Marcus, who worked at the coffee shop, and even he wasn't around most of the time. So I decided to spend a Saturday afternoon just walking around the town, seeing if there was anything interesting I had missed. I walked down Main Street looking at all the shop windows. Most of them were closed or just really boring. But then I noticed one shop I hadn't seen before. It was tucked between the hardware store and an empty storefront, and it had a small hand-painted wooden sign above the door that read Eleanor's Vintage Treasures. The window display was full of old dresses, jewelry boxes, handbags, and one really striking mannequin wearing a bright red 1950s-style cocktail dress. I don't know why, but something about the shop drew me in. I decided to go inside, just to see what was there. When I opened the door, a little bell rang, and I stepped into what felt like a completely different world. The shop smelled like old perfume and lavender, and every inch of space was filled with vintage clothing, shoes, accessories, and knickknacks from every decade going back at least 100 years. "Hello, dear," said an elderly voice from somewhere in the back. Come in. Feel free to look around." A moment later, a small woman, probably in her late 70s, came shuffling out from behind a curtain. She had silver hair pulled up in a bun and was wearing a purple shawl over a floral dress. "Hi, I'm just looking around," I said politely. "Oh, that's perfectly fine. Take your time. My name is Eleanor, by the way," she said back to me, smiling warmly. I introduced myself and then started wandering around the store. There was so much stuff to look at. Old records and record players, antique jewelry, hats, gloves, handbags, and rack after rack of dresses, skirts, blouses, and coats. I wasn't really planning on buying anything. I mean, I'm a guy. What would I do with any of this stuff? But it was fascinating to look at. As I made my way toward the back of the store, I noticed a smaller room off to the side. It was separated by a heavy velvet curtain, and there was a small sign next to it that read, "Special Collection." "Please ask before entering curious," I called out to Eleanor. "Hey, Eleanor, is it okay if I look in the special collection room?" Eleanor's face changed slightly when I asked. She looked at me for a long moment before answering, "Oh yes, dear, you can go in there, but I should warn you, the items in that room are a bit unique. They have stories attached to them. Not everyone finds what they expect," Eleanor said back to me in a mysterious tone. I laughed a little, thinking she was just being theatrical to make her shop more interesting. "Okay, thanks. I'll just take a quick look," I said, pushing aside the velvet curtain and stepping into the smaller room. The special collection room was even more packed than the main store. There were mannequins wearing complete outfits from various decades, a wedding dress from what looked like the 1920s, a flapper outfit, a poodle skirt ensemble, a hippie dress from the 1960s, and in the very center of the room was a mannequin wearing something that immediately caught my eye. It was a knee-length sundress in a soft yellow color with tiny white flowers embroidered along the hem. It looked incredibly delicate, and there was something about it that made me feel like I was staring at something important. I don't know how to explain it exactly. It was just a dress, but it felt like the dress was staring back at me. I stepped closer to get a better look, and I noticed there was a small handwritten tag hanging from the sleeve. It read, "Amelia's Summer Dress, worn once June, 1962. I stood there for probably a full minute just staring at it before Eleanor came into the room. "I see you found Amelia's dress," said Eleanor gently. "Who was Amelia?" I asked, without taking my eyes off the dress. "Amelia was a young woman who lived in this town a long time ago. She bought this dress for a party, but she never got to wear it more than once. She passed away that same summer. Very tragic, her mother donated the dress to me. Many years later, she wanted it to find a new home," said Eleanor sadly. I felt a strange pull toward the dress, even though I knew logically I couldn't possibly wear it. It was cut for a small woman, and I'm a 6-foot-tall guy, but something in me really wanted to at least touch it. "Can I feel the fabric?" I asked. Eleanor nodded slowly. "Of course, dear, but I should tell you the same thing. I told Amelia's mother when she brought it to me. This dress carries something with it, not everyone can wear it, and those who can are often changed by the experience," said Eleanor almost in a whisper. I brushed off her warning as more shopkeeper theatrics, and I reached out to touch the fabric. It was incredibly soft, almost like liquid silk running through my fingers. I closed my eyes for just a second, and when I opened them, I felt slightly dizzy. "Whoa," I said, stepping back a bit. "I must be dehydrated or something. I've been walking around town all day. Are you all right?" Eleanor asked me, looking concerned. Yeah, I'm fine," I said, shaking my head. "Listen, how much is this dress?" "I don't even know why I asked. I couldn't wear it, and I didn't have anyone to give it to." Eleanor smiled softly. "For you, dear. I'll let it go for $25, but only if you promise to give it a good home and not just leave it in a closet somewhere." She said back to me it was such a strange request, but I found myself nodding. "I'll take care of it, I promise." I said, reaching for my wallet. I paid Eleanor, and she carefully folded the dress and placed it in a paper bag with tissue paper. As I was leaving, she called out to me, "One more thing. Dear, if anything strange happens, please come back and see me. Sometimes these things need to be understood, not fought," Eleanor said mysteriously. I gave her a confused nod and left the shop with the paper bag under my arm, the whole walk home. I couldn't stop thinking about what Eleanor had said and about Amelia, the girl who supposedly only wore the dress, once I got back to my apartment and set the bag on my kitchen counter. I stared at it for a while, feeling kind of silly. Why had I bought a woman's dress from 1962? I was 24 years old. I didn't even know any women who would fit in it. Maybe I could sell it online or something. But for now, I decided to take it out and look at it more carefully. I unfolded the tissue paper and pulled the dress out, laying it flat on my bed. It really was beautiful. The yellow color was soft and warm, and the little embroidered flowers were incredibly detailed. Each one had been done by hand as I ran my fingers over the fabric again. I felt that same wave of dizziness from before I decided I should probably eat something, so I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. But even while I was eating, I kept thinking about the dress after I finished eating. I went back to my bedroom and looked at it again. I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly had this urge to try it on. I know that sounds weird. I'm a guy, I've never worn women's clothes before, but there was something about this specific dress that just called to me, and I was alone in my apartment, nobody would ever know. I decided to just go for it. I mean, what was the worst that could happen? It wouldn't even fit me. I would just laugh at myself in the mirror, take it off, and put it back in the bag. I took off my clothes down to my boxers, and then I picked up the dress and carefully pulled it over my head. I expected it to get stuck on my shoulders or be way too tight, but instead it slid down my body like water and settled perfectly around me, which was strange because it looked way too small when I was holding it. I looked down at myself and blinked. The dress was fitting me perfectly. The neckline sat softly across my collarbones, the waist cinched in at exactly the right spot, and the skirt fell to just above my knees. I laughed nervously. That's really weird. I thought I walked over to my full-length mirror to see how ridiculous I must look. But when I got to the mirror, I didn't see what I expected. Instead of seeing a tall, skinny guy wearing a woman's dress, I saw somebody else standing there staring back at me. She was around 5'4", with soft shoulders and delicate arms. Her chest filled out the top of the dress in a way that mine definitely hadn't. A moment ago, her hair was long, wavy, and honey blonde, falling in soft waves down past her shoulders. Her face was heart-shaped, with big blue eyes, small nose, and full pink lips. She looked exactly like what I imagined Amelia might have looked like on that summer day in 1962. I stumbled backward, almost falling over. What the hell, I said out loud. But the voice that came out of my mouth wasn't mine. It was soft, high-pitched, and gentle. I clapped my hands over my mouth, and I felt the softness of my new lips against my fingers. My hands themselves were completely different, smaller, with slender fingers and neatly rounded nails. I ran back to the mirror and stared at myself in complete shock. This couldn't be happening. I reached up and touched my hair. It felt real long and silky. I ran my hands down my sides, feeling the curve of hips I had never had before, and a waist that was much narrower than mine had ever been. I looked at my legs. They were smooth and shapely, and shorter than they had been just minutes ago. I sat down on the edge of my bed, trying to breathe and figure out what was going on. Eleanor's words came back to me. This dress carries something with it. Those who can wear it are often changed by the experience. I realized what had happened. The dress had transformed me into Amelia, or into someone who looked like her. At least I stood back up shakily and took another look in the mirror. I had to admit, as terrifying as this was, I looked beautiful. I mean, like really beautiful. The kind of pretty that people write songs about. My movements even felt different when I raised my arm. I did it with a natural grace I had never had as a guy. When I tilted my head, my long hair swayed softly. It was like I had been given a completely new body that just knew how to be feminine on its own. Okay. I said to myself, trying to stay calm, I need to figure this out. I need to get out of this dress and see if I turn back with shaking hands. I reached down to lift the hem, but as soon as my fingers touched the fabric, I felt this strong pull, almost like a wave of warmth that made me not want to take it off. It was like the dress was telling me to keep it on. I forced myself to try anyway. I pulled the dress up over my hips and then over my chest, but when I tried to pull it over my head, it seemed to get tangled and my arms got weaker. I struggled for what felt like a full minute before finally giving up and letting the dress fall back into place immediately. The strange, warm feeling faded. I could still take the dress off if I really wanted to, but something inside me was making it very, very hard to do. I sat back down on the bed and started to cry, which felt strange because I hadn't cried in years, but as this new person, the tears came very easily. I cried for maybe 10 minutes, and then I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand and stood up. I needed to go see Eleanor. She had told me to come back if something strange happened, and this definitely qualified. I looked around my apartment for shoes, but obviously nothing I owned was going to fit my new, smaller feet. I noticed then that inside the paper bag, there was a small pair of white flat sandals I hadn't seen before. They were tucked underneath the tissue paper. I took them out and slipped them on, and of course they fit perfectly. I grabbed my keys, my wallet, and my phone, and I stepped out of my apartment feeling like I was walking through a dream. The sunlight felt different on my new skin, softer and warmer. At the same time, I could feel the breeze on my bare legs and my long hair moving around my shoulders. It was the strangest, most surreal feeling I've ever had in my life. I walked back down Main Street trying to keep my head down, but I noticed people looking at me. A man walking his dog stopped and stared as I passed by two teenage boys across the street, practically tripped over each other trying to get a better look. I could feel my cheeks turning pink from the attention. This was so different from being a guy. Nobody had ever looked at me twice before, but now everyone was looking. I finally made it to Eleanor's shop and pushed the door open. The little bell rang and Eleanor came out from behind the curtain. Immediately her face broke into a warm, knowing smile the moment she saw me. "Oh dear, so it did choose you," Eleanor said gently. I ran up to her practically in tears. "Eleanor, what's happening to me? I'm not Amelia, I'm Tyler. I bought the dress a few hours ago, and I just wanted to try it on, and now I'm like this. What did you do to me?" I said in my new soft voice. Eleanor took my hands in hers and led me over to a small couch in the corner of the shop. She sat me down and then sat next to me. "Sit. Dear, breathe. I'll explain everything," Eleanor said, calmly. Eleanor explained that the dress had been made by Amelia's grandmother, a woman who had known certain old traditions. The dress was made with the intention of giving Amelia a magical summer where she could feel truly beautiful and confident. But Amelia had passed away before the magic could really be experienced, so the dress had been sitting waiting for someone else to wear it. Eleanor said the dress only fits and transforms someone who deeply needs the experience. It wouldn't just work on anyone who happened to try it on. It had chosen me for some reason. "But I'm a guy," I said, still confused. "I don't need to be a woman. I liked my life the way it was." Eleanor gave me a gentle look. "Are you sure? Dear, when you first saw the dress, you said you felt like it was staring back at you. Sometimes we need things we don't know. We need," Eleanor said softly. I sat there thinking about what she said, and the truth was, I hadn't been happy in a long time. I had been feeling lost and lonely for months, maybe years. I had moved to Millbrook to escape from a life that felt like it wasn't going anywhere. Maybe part of me had been looking for something, even if I didn't know what. "Okay," I said quietly, "but how do I turn back?" Eleanor's face grew a bit serious. "That's the difficult part. Dear, the dress can be removed, but the longer you wear it, the more the change becomes permanent. If you take it off within the first hour, you'll return to being Tyler, exactly as you were between 1 and 24 hours. Some elements of the change will remain. Your body might stay a bit softer, your voice a bit higher, but you'll mostly be yourself again. After 24 hours, the change is permanent. Whether or not you continue to wear the dress, the body becomes yours forever," Eleanor explained gently. I looked at the clock on the shop wall. It had been about 40 minutes since I put the dress on. I still had time to reverse everything, if I just went home and forced the dress off. But as I sat there in Eleanor's shop, feeling this new body, feeling the softness of my hair against my neck, the delicate weight of my chest, the graceful way my hands moved when I gestured, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. I felt curious. I felt excited. I felt alive. So what do? I asked Eleanor. She smiled. That's your choice, dear. You can go home right now and end this, or you can take some time to think about it, maybe try being Amelia for a day or a few days and see how it feels. The important thing is that you understand what you're deciding. I sat there quietly for a while thinking. Eleanor made me a cup of tea, and we chatted about small things like the weather and the town. While I tried to sort through my feelings after about half an hour, I made a decision. I want to give it a chance. I said quietly, I don't know if I want to be a woman forever, but I want to see what it feels like maybe for a few days. If I decide I want to go back before the 24 hours is up, I will. Eleanor nodded. That seems very sensible, dear. Now let's get you set up. I gave up my apartment yesterday. No, wait, sorry. Let's think about practical things. You'll need a name if you're going to be out in public. You can be Amelia if you like, or pick another name, and you'll need clothes and some idea of what to tell people. We decided I would go by Amelia for now. It felt right somehow, like I was carrying on her memory. Eleanor gave me a small suitcase full of vintage clothes she said had been donated over the years, dresses, skirts, blouses, shoes, even underwear that would fit my new body. She also gave me some basic makeup and showed me how to apply a little bit, so I would look natural. We agreed I would go back to my apartment for now and take some time to just experience being Amelia. I walked home with the suitcase, and my emotions were all over the place. I was scared, confused, excited, nervous, and honestly a little bit thrilled. I got back to my apartment and spent the rest of the day just being in my new body. I looked at myself in the mirror probably 50 times. I practiced walking, which felt different in my new lighter body. I even tried on some of the other clothes. Eleanor had given me a pair of jeans and a blouse, a summer skirt with a t-shirt. Each time I put on new clothes, I felt a small thrill, like I was discovering a new part of myself. I made dinner and eating felt different too. My new mouth was smaller, and I noticed I got full much faster than before. As evening came, I sat by the window watching the sunset and thinking my old life as Tyler suddenly felt very far away, and strangely I didn't miss it as much as I thought I would. I fell asleep that night in a pair of soft pajamas Eleanor had given me, and I dreamed of a summer party in 1962 with music, laughter, and a girl in a yellow dress dancing under the stars. I woke up the next morning and immediately checked the mirror. I was still Amelia. The change hadn't reversed itself overnight. I checked the clock. It had been about 18 hours since I put the dress on. I had 6 hours left to decide. I made myself breakfast, trying to see how I felt in the morning light, and I realized that I felt good. I felt lighter, more optimistic, more excited about the day ahead than I had felt in months, maybe years. I put on one of the summer dresses Eleanor had given me, a light blue one, and I decided to go for a walk into town. The streets of Millbrook felt different when you experienced them as a young woman. I noticed things I had never noticed before, the way people smiled at you when you passed the way, strangers held doors open, the way the world just seemed a little bit more colorful. I stopped at the coffee shop where my friend Marcus worked. I wanted to see how he would react to me. Of course, he didn't recognize me at all when I walked up to the counter. "Hi, welcome in. What can I get you today?" Marcus said in his usual friendly way. I ordered a coffee, and while he was making it, he kept glancing at me, smiling. I could tell he thought I was cute, and part of me thought, this is so weird. My only friend in town doesn't even know it's me, but another part of me thought, this is nice. I like this feeling. I sat by the window sipping my coffee, watching the town go by, and thinking about my decision. I still had a few hours left, and I could go back to Eleanor's shop, take off the dress, and be Tyler again by lunchtime. But the more I sat there, the more I realized I didn't want to go back. The truth was Tyler's life had been kind of empty. I had been working from home, barely seeing anyone. I hadn't been on a date in over a year. I hadn't really been happy since I moved out here, maybe even before that. But as Amelia, in just one day, I had already talked to more people, had more experiences, felt more alive. I don't know if it was the magic of the dress, or just the newness of everything. But I felt like a different person in more ways than one. I finished my coffee and made my decision. I walked back to Eleanor's shop. The little bell rang as I opened the door, and Eleanor came out from behind the curtain. She took one look at my face and smiled. "You've decided, haven't you, dear?" she said knowingly. "I want to stay," I said, feeling more certain than I had felt about anything in a long time. "I want to be Amelia. I don't want to go back." Eleanor nodded, taking my hand. "There's just one more thing, dear, now that you've decided the dress is done with you. It wanted to give you a gift, but it doesn't need to stay with you forever. You can wear it whenever you like or not. The change is permanent now, regardless," she said gently. We walked to the back of the shop, and Eleanor helped me change out of the yellow dress and into another outfit. When I looked in the mirror, I was still Amelia. I was still 5'4", still had the honey blonde hair, still had the soft feminine features. The dress had done its work, and the change was mine to keep forever. I hung the yellow dress carefully in Eleanor's shop, where I decided it should stay. It belonged there, in case someone else ever needed the experience I had needed. I spent the next few weeks getting used to my new life. I sold Tyler's old apartment lease with Eleanor's help. She knew someone at the local rental office, and I moved into a small cottage on the edge of town. I told my parents an elaborate story about needing to travel for work, and I set up an email account under Amelia's name so I could occasionally send them updates. As Tyler, I don't know if I'll ever fully explain what happened to me to them, but for now they don't worry. Marcus and I ended up becoming close friends, and eventually, more than that, we've been dating for about 3 months now, and he still doesn't know that I used to be his neighbor Tyler, and I don't think he ever needs to know. As far as anyone in Millbrook is concerned, I've always been Amelia, the young woman who moved to town and started a new life. I still work as a freelance graphic designer, but now I also help Eleanor at the shop on weekends. She's teaching me about the old traditions and about the other special items in her collection. Maybe one day I'll be the one running that shop, passing on gifts and transformations to other people who need them looking back on it. Now I understand what Eleanor meant when she said, "Sometimes we need things we don't know. We need Tyler wasn't happy. Tyler was lost. Amelia is happy. Amelia has a life. Amelia has love and friends and purpose. I don't miss being Tyler. I miss him the way you might miss an old photograph of yourself, distant, but still part of you. The yellow dress still hangs in Eleanor's shop waiting for someone else who needs it, and every time I visit and see it hanging there, I remember that afternoon when I walked into a vintage store just looking for something interesting, and I found a completely new life. Instead, I'm Amelia now, and this is exactly who I was always meant to be. Thanks so much for watching this video. We really hope you enjoyed this longer single-part story. More videos will be coming very soon. We would really appreciate it if you would like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.